Imagine for a second that it is 4:04 in the morning. It's November 16th, deep in Harris County, Texas.
Right.
Now, usually, mid-November in southeast Texas is still relatively mild, humid even. But on this specific morning, the air is biting cold.
Which is unusual for the area.
Very unusual. And there's this thick fog rolling off the bayou, just blanketing everything in gray. And moving through that fog, you have this convoy of tactical vehicles.
Completely blacked out.
No lights, no sirens, just the sound of heavy engines idling low, creeping toward the eastern industrial edge of Houston.
It's a scene that feels like it belongs in the climax of a thriller movie, but the reality was far more clinical and far more terrifying.
Because they weren't after what you'd expect.
Exactly. They weren't heading toward a drug den or weapons cache. The target was a completely nondescript building surrounded by shipping warehouses and trucking depots.
The kind of place you drive past 1,000 times and never notice.
You wouldn't look twice. It looked like just another logistics hub. But the FBI and the Texas Rangers had designated this raid Operation Cardiac Breach.
Cardiac Breach. That name alone gives you a chill before you even know what they found. So, 4:10 a.m. hits. The order comes over the encrypted radios. Execute.
And that's when the silence breaks.
It's shattered. You've got a battering ram hitting a steel-reinforced door, the lock mechanisms just shatter, and you have the FBI hostage rescue team and Texas Rangers pouring into this facility.
Flashlights cutting through the darkness.
But, and this is the detail that really stuck with me from the reports, the first thing they noticed wasn't a person, it wasn't a weapon, it was the sound.
The hum.
Exactly, the deafening rhythmic hum of industrial refrigeration units.
And then the cold hits them.
Oh yeah. The temperature, they step inside and it is freezing. The interior is being maintained at exactly 38 degrees Fahrenheit.
Which is the industry standard temperature for a commercial morgue. That is the immediate sensory shock. You are walking into a freezer.
Not a clinic, not a lab.
Not at all. And once their eyes adjusted to the strobe lights, they realized this wasn't a clinic, it wasn't a lab, it was a vault.
A vault. And what was in it? They find rows and rows of industrial shelving. And lining those shelves are 250 glass containers.
And inside each one
is a preserved human heart.
Suspended in formalin solution. No names, no patient identifiers.
Just handwritten codes.
Just codes.
250 hearts, that is.
Huh.
It's hard to even wrap your head around that number. Today, we are unpacking a story that starts in that freezing warehouse in Houston, but ends up revealing a global syndicate that has literally turned human beings into commodities.
And we need to be clear about the scope here. This isn't just about one rogue warehouse in Texas. What Operation Cardiac Breach uncovered is a supply chain.
A massive one.
That stretches from the U.S.-Mexico border all the way to the Middle East. And as we dig deeper into the new information we have, it touches on a terrifying administrative scheme involving Ghana.
That is the part that I think is going to surprise a lot of people. We tend to think of trafficking as just physical kidnapping the van with no window.
Right, the brute force method.
But there is a bureaucratic side to this that we're going to get to. But the core question, the mission for this deep dive, is to understand how a medical research front hid an industrial-scale organ trafficking network for 3 years without anyone noticing.
Precisely. We're looking at the industrialization of the human body and the disturbing efficiency of it all. This wasn't a crime of passion, it was a business model.
Okay, so let's go back inside that facility in Houston. Let's really unpack what they actually found, because this place was set up like a fortress, wasn't it?
It was designed for opacity. I mean, completely. You had reinforced doors, a central refrigeration chamber that was much larger than aerial surveillance had suggested, and a completely separate office wing with encrypted servers.
And the inventory is where the story really is.
The inventory is what tells the story. You mentioned the 250 hearts, but it's the lack of legitimacy that is so glaring.
Right, because if this were a legitimate research facility, you'd have paperwork everywhere.
Oh, absolutely.
Consent forms, chain of custody documents, university accreditations. You can't just have jars on a shelf.
And none of that existed. Zero.
Yeah.
No medical license, no accreditation, no bioethics oversight, no connection to any hospital or university program.
So what was on the jars?
The only things on those jars were codes, numbers, and letters. And that anonymity is a feature, not a bug. It strips the humanity from the victim and turns the organ into a product unit, a stock-keeping unit, basically.
But how do you hide a morgue in the middle of an industrial park for 3 years? I mean, surely someone notices 250 hearts piling up.
Well, they hid in plain sight. That's the oldest trick in the book, but it worked. The building claimed federal research exemptions.
Okay, what does that even mean?
Well, these exemptions were completely fabricated, but they were sophisticated enough to act as a shield. When local code enforcement would come by to check on things, the operators would flash these federal documents, claim sensitive biological research,
And just turn them away.
and turn them away.
So they used bureaucracy as a weapon against inspection. They weaponized the boredom and the jurisdiction issues of local government.
Exactly. This is a federal matter. You don't have clearance. It works more often than you'd think. And their operational security was tight.
How tight?
Neighbors reported seeing refrigerated trucks, the kind you'd see at a supermarket loading dock, arriving only after midnight.
Never during the day.
No staff ever entered during the day. Security cameras covered every single angle. It was a black box.
And like so many of these massive cases, the whole thing unraveled because of one person, an anonymous tip.
September 2025, a former employee. And you have to imagine the moral weight on this whistleblower.
It must have been immense.
They contacted the FBI's Biological Crimes Unit and described conditions that violated every single protocol for human tissue storage. They sent photos.
Actual photos from inside.
Yes, rows of jars, no institutional review board approval. That tip was the crack in the dam.
So the FBI gets this tip, they start watching the place, and they see these trucks coming in. But they aren't coming from hospitals.
No, that's the first major red flag. They documented delivery patterns from 3 specific cities: El Paso, San Antonio, and Laredo.
All border regions.
Every single one. The manifests listed the cargo as medical supplies, which is vague enough to pass a cursory glance, but specific enough to explain the refrigeration.
It's just plausible enough.
Right. But thermal imaging doesn't lie. Even for the street, they could see the building was effectively a giant refrigerator.
And then there's the money. Because you don't run an operation like this without massive cash flow.
The financial forensics are staggering. Over just 14 months, this facility received $18 million in wire transfers.
$18 million for a research facility that doesn't publish any research.
And the money wasn't coming from the NIH or grants. It was moving through shell companies in Delaware and Nevada states with very favorable corporate secrecy laws.
Of course.
But the source of the funds traced back to Mogadishu, Dubai, and Istanbul.
So you have money coming from the Middle East and East Africa, and bodies, or parts of bodies, coming from the Mexican border, all meeting in a warehouse in Houston.
That is the nexus. That's the global hub they created. And sitting at the center of it, physically inside that warehouse when the raid happened, was the architect, a man named Abdi Rahman Khalif Osman.
Let's talk about Osman, because when the agents break down the door, they find him in the office wing. And he's not running, he's not fighting, he's just sitting there.
Hands raised, completely silent. It's a chilling image. Osman is a Somali national who entered the U.S. in 2019. He came in on a medical research visa.
A medical research visa.
Yes.
Yeah.
But here is the first layer of the fraud. His credentials claimed he was affiliated with a hospital in Mogadishu.
A hospital that, it turns out, hadn't existed for years.
Correct. It ceased operations in 2017. So his entire presence in the U.S. was based on a lie. He was living in the warehouse, sleeping in a back room, living under a false identity. He was a ghost running a graveyard.
And a wealthy ghost at that. When they drilled into the wall safe in his office...
$470,000 in cash.
Plastic wrap.
Plastic wrap cash. And on his desk, the digital smoking gun. 3 encrypted phones, and a laptop that was open and displaying financial spreadsheets.
Those spreadsheets and the ledgers they found, this is where the cardiac breach investigation goes from, a biohazard storage issue to a full-blown murder investigation. Because they started deciphering the codes on the jars.
This is the logistics of horror. The agents found a ledger that acted as a translation key for the codes on the jars.
A Rosetta Stone for this whole operation.
In a way, yes. Let's look at one example they decoded. 37-meter AB14 MCJ 18K.
Okay, let's unpack that. What does that string of characters actually mean?
It's chillingly simple. It translates to specimen 37, male, blood type AB, acquired March 14th from Ciudad Juarez, payment $18,000.
My God, it's literally an invoice for a human life. It reads like a grocery receipt.
It's a bill of lading. Here's another one.
Yeah.
82FO22 John M1 MT22K.
Okay, what's that?
Specimen 82, female, type O, acquired June 22nd from Matamoros, payment $22,000.
Why the price difference? $18,000 versus $22,000.
Supply and demand. Type O was a universal donor for some organs, or simply more in demand. Rare blood types commanded higher fees. They were pricing these hearts like you would price commodities on a stock exchange. And the locations. Ciudad Juarez, Matamoros. These are right across the border.
This was the investigative breakthrough. The FBI correlated these dates and locations with reports of missing migrants in cartel-controlled territories. Places like Reynosa, Nuevo Laredo, Juarez.
We've heard stories about migrants disappearing for years. I mean, it's a constant story. But usually the assumption is kidnapping for ransom.
Right.
You know, call the family in the U.S., demand $5,000, let them go.
That is the traditional model. But this creates a grim realization. These weren't kidnappings for ransom. These were kidnappings for harvest.
For harvest.
The victims fit a profile: young, healthy, traveling alone, or in small groups. They would vanish without trace. No phone calls to family, no demands. They just disappeared.
And the forensic evidence found in Mexico confirmed this wasn't just speculation. Mexican authorities found shallow graves in areas corresponding to the dates in the ledger. The bodies showed crude surgical incisions. This wasn't professional transplantation work. This was extraction.
Just harvesting.
Harvesting. The 32 names found in Osmond's ledger. Those weren't donors. They were victims. The preserved hearts in Houston were stolen lives.
It changes the way you look at the border crisis entirely. It's not just about policy. It's about a predation that is almost unimaginable.
It's a layer of horror on top of an already desperate situation.
But for this market to exist, for Osmond to have $18 million flowing through shell companies, there has to be a buyer. Who is buying a human heart for that kind of money?
This is where we get into the global demand. The investigation traced the buyers to wealthy individuals in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, and Turkey.
So extremely wealthy people who presumably need a transplant but don't want to wait.
Exactly. They are bypassing legal transplant waiting lists for what the intercepted messages called convenience and discretion.
Convenience, that is a terrifying word in this context.
It is. The prices reflect that convenience.
Yeah.
A shipment of 3 hearts to Riyadh was confirmed for $240,000.
Wow.
A single buyer in Istanbul offered $90,000 for a specific O-negative heart.
$90,000 for one heart.
Yes.
And we have to ask about the ethics of the buyers here, because you can't tell me they think this is legitimate. You don't pay 90 grand in cash through a shell company for a legal organ donation.
They absolutely knew, or they chose to know nothing, which is the same thing legally and morally. No legitimate medical procedure involves wire transfers to a Delaware LLC and delivery via a smuggler.
They had to know.
They value their own survival or the survival of their family members over the life of the person that heart belonged to. The intercepted messages discussed rare inventory and expedited shipping as if they were ordering a luxury car.
It's sickening. It really is. But Houston wasn't the only location, was it? When they cracked Osmond's phone and looked at the network, they realized this was bigger.
Much bigger. This wasn't a rogue operation, it was infrastructure. It was a franchise.
A franchise.
On the same night as the Houston raid, authorities hit a warehouse near the riverfront in Detroit. They found 68 organs there. A Kenyan driver was arrested attempting to flee.
68 more. And Minneapolis, too.
Yes, a storage unit near the Minneapolis airport. 23 hearts and a mobile embalming station.
A mobile embalming station, so they were processing on site.
It appears so. Agents caught a Somali man there trying to burn documents shipping invoices to Europe.
So you have this triangle: Houston, Detroit, Minneapolis, collection points, or maybe distribution hubs.
It looks like it. But here is where it gets really interesting and terrifyingly sophisticated. The source material points to a connection that goes beyond just grabbing people off the street in Mexico. It brings us to Ghana.
Okay, so let's pivot to that, because this is a crucial evolution in the modus operandi.
It really is. We've been talking about physical kidnapping at the border, brute force. But the investigation into the global network revealed a method that we can call administrative entrapment. And this is specifically highlighting a crisis in Ghana.
The phrase used in the source material is diabolical human trafficking disguised as employment agencies. How does that work?
Okay, think about what a trafficker needs. They need healthy subjects. How do you find healthy subjects efficiently?
You'd have to screen a lot of people.
Right, so you set up a fake employment agency. You promise jobs abroad, nursing, construction, domestic work. Good jobs that people desperately need.
And to apply for those jobs, you have to do a medical check.
Bingo. You demand a full medical screening. Blood type, tissue compatibility, medical history, the whole 9 yards. The source material highlights that hospitals and agencies in Ghana are effectively harvesting data.
They're not offering jobs, they're building a database.
Exactly. They are processing sensitive medical and personal data of candidates under the guise of an application.
So the job application is actually a shopping catalog for the organ syndicate.
That is the implication. It's data harvesting as a precursor to physical exploitation. The syndicate doesn't just grab a random person. They look at their database and say, we need an O-negative heart. Candidate 405 in ACRA matches. We know he's healthy. We have his vitals.
That is, it's industrial. It's monstrously efficient. And the source material is very specific about calling for action here.
It is. It explicitly demands that the president of Ghana, John Dramani Mahama, and the U.S. president take action to stop this organ and data harvesting.
It's not just a crime, it's a national security risk.
It points out that identity misuse and the role of these fake companies are putting public safety at risk.
It's a betrayal of trust. You go to get a job to support your family, and instead you're handing over the blueprint of your biology to the people who want to sell it. It's just evil.
And this connects the dots back to the U.S. operation. Remember the ledger in Houston? 37-meter AB. That level of specificity suggests they knew exactly what they were getting before they got it.
They weren't just grabbing people and hoping for the best.
No. The fake employment scheme is the front end of the supply chain. It identifies the inventory. The border or the transit route is just where the collection happens.
It's a global trap. So looking at the aftermath of all this, Operation Cardiac Breach happens, the warehouses are raided. What is the fallout?
Legally, the hammer is coming down, but it's complicated. Osman has been charged with conspiracy to commit murder, unlawful procurement, and trafficking. He is facing life without parole.
As you should.
Absolutely. But the international side is messier. The U.S. has issued extradition requests for the buyers in the Gulf states and Turkey.
And how's that going?
Well, these are wealthy, connected individuals. We are seeing resistance. Diplomatic channels are clogging up. Money buys a lot of protection.
So the people who created the demand might just get away with it.
It's a very real possibility.
And here in the U.S., what's the reaction been?
Reaction has been swift, at least on the surface. Congressional hearings have been announced. The 8th AMA, the American Medical Association, is demanding stricter oversight of tissue storage.
What?
Because, frankly, it is embarrassing that a warehouse full of hearts could operate for 3 years under a fake research exemption. It shows a massive regulatory failure.
But for me, the hardest part of this story isn't the legal battle, it's the human toll. We keep saying 250 hearts, but that is 250 people.
250 families who are waiting for a phone call that will never come.
Well.
And the tragedy is the identification struggle. DNA analysis is slow. Many families may never know if their missing loved one is in those jars.
And there was one detail from the raid, something they found on Osman's laptop that just broke me.
The proof of inventory.
Yeah, can you talk about that?
They found photos. These weren't medical photos. They were photos of migrants, alive, standing against a wall, holding a card with a number on it.
Like a mugshot.
Like a product code. Facial recognition matched some of those faces to missing persons reports from Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala.
So this was the proof.
It proved that they were alive, healthy, and in custody immediately before the harvest. It destroys the defense that maybe they'd found bodies or bought them from morgues. No, these people were cataloged while they were breathing.
That is, it's haunting. It really is.
It is the ultimate objectification of a human being, taking a picture of them with their item number before you kill them.
So we've unpacked the facility, the money, the cartels, and this terrifying data harvesting scheme in Ghana. When you step back and look at the big picture here, what are we actually seeing?
We are seeing the dark side of globalization. We live in a world where money moves instantly, where goods move seamlessly across borders. But this case proves that crime moves through those same channels just as easily.
Maybe even more easily.
Perhaps. Borders are porous to the traffickers, but they become barriers to justice when we try to catch the buyers.
And the FBI admitted something disturbing, didn't they? They said this network used encryption and shell companies to hide for years, which begs the question.
How many other warehouses are there right now, tonight? If there was one in Houston, one in Detroit, one in Minneapolis. Are there facilities in Europe, in Asia? The infrastructure Osman built wasn't unique. It was a franchise model.
That is a terrifying thought, that Operation Cardiac Breach might just be scratching the surface.
It almost certainly is. The economics of it are too powerful. As long as there is a buyer willing to pay $90,000 for a heart, and employment agencies willing to harvest data and people, the market remains.
And the source material actually asks the listener to do something here, doesn't it? It has a call to action.
It does. It asks you to tap, like, or comment to break the silence. Sounds small, but public awareness is the only thing stripping the secrecy from these operations. When we talk about it, they can't hide in the shadows as easily.
250 futures were erased not by accident but by design.
And that's the part we have to remember. This was a system, a deliberate, calculated system.
It's a lot to process. But I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We've talked about the buyers, the sellers, the victim. But think about the intermediaries we haven't caught. The specialized couriers who knew what they were transporting. The corrupt customs officials who stamped medical supplies on a crate of human hearts. The IT technicians who set up the encrypted servers for Osman.
The network requires hundreds of blind eyes, hundreds of people willing to look the other way for a paycheck.
Exactly. For every Osman, there are 50 people who just did their job and didn't ask questions. How close are we in our daily lives to systems like this without even knowing it? That's something that's going to keep me up tonight.
It should keep us all up.
That's it for this deep dive. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and we'll catch you on the next one.